best crypto asset? Bitcoin's the best crypto asset. Which one's the best crypto asset? Bitcoin's the best crypto asset. Which one's the best? 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 What's the second best?
Discover crypto. We are here with the market feeling like it's never going to stop going down. But what was that sentiment we felt just the other day? It was just about to absolutely moonshot. So why is the sentiment so crushed today when we dive in and look at this and realize that the price action is still, we have the total market cap still above $4 trillion. We're still sitting here in the neutral stage. We just kind of dinked just a little bit into the, you could say, over bullish stage, but we've been talking about the signals, the signs, the indications that we would likely get a pullback, and we're getting that pullback. So why is so many people acting like the world is turning on its head? Because when we look at the price action, I shared this today. However, I want to highlight something here. Look, this is attached to this one on the 7th. And then you come, let's see, there should be two here. And then you go to this one, and there's one all the way back here as well. Before this move has transpired, we talked about the position, the potential for the price action to come down here to a $121,000 region, potential bounce, watching for that bounce up into the golden pocket area, and then coming down to 118. Excuse me. And what we were seeing is kind of like, we highlighted exactly what was likely to happen. And then what happened later on that day, we saw the price action, of course, that bearish divergence, which was also highlighted here in the Discord on that same chart from before. But we're getting the move down. We got the move down tested into this region, money flow flip negative. And then we move forward yet again to today. And we see that the price action, okay, there's that bear div. Wonderful. Price came down, bounced, and came up. And so what does that look like on the chart? Well, let's go ahead and highlight something that is, I mean, nothing short of miraculous if you're not paying attention. But in reality, all the signs and signals were there in the chart. Notice what you see here. The bounce on the price action on Bitcoin came up and rejected exactly, literally exactly at that golden pocket, which means the 0.618 fib, 61.8% of the way up, the golden ratio, the area of which we see rejections or overwhelming bullish courage and momentum slicing through. In this case, this is a regular area that you could expect a potential rejection. We got the rejection. Price came back down and got a little bit more of a washout below this. The question is this a signal that the bottom is in? Are we going to bounce from here? We got a guest coming on here in just a few minutes. It's going to be sharing some overwhelmingly important charts here that I hope all of you pay attention to. So stick around from that. But as we get into the show, I want to ask each and every one of you, are you scared? Actually, if you're scared, say you're scared. You're a little worried right now. Let other people know you're worried because they might be worried too, and they're not sure what to do about it. If you're super bullish here and you're potentially even hoping it drops a little further so you get a little better buy opportunity lower, say bull, say scared or bull. There's no fret here if you have trouble managing like your feelings around this. It actually helps other people to realize there's a lot of people scared right now. And that fear, when the fear comes into the market, it tends to be an extraordinary signal about where to really start paying attention. So let's actually come over here, which you're going to see in a second, and take basically take a gander. Where is that? Do I not? There it is right there. Take a look at the fear and greed index and see where we're printing right now. Looking at this, okay, we're still very high. We're nowhere near in that fear zone, which is a good thing and a bad thing, depending on what you're expecting that it needs to happen today. You're going to get wrecked if you need the price to go a certain direction. If you need it to go there because you're over leveraged, if you need it to go there because you have your rent money on this and it was supposed to be super bullish, it's supposed to be mooning right now. You're going to get wrecked. You got to rebalance. You got to, it's not only about rebalancing what you're doing in the markets, you need to rebalance the way you're looking at data in this market, because I'm still seeing a lot of overwhelming bullish signs about where this market can go. but with the caveat of understanding that overwhelming bullishness also sets the stage for some very scary price action to the downside that ends up being a slingshot, Look at this. This was a bear market, but the slingshot all the way down here. This one was harder to determine because we had some bearishness, in terms of the fear at these levels. But in a bull trend, when you get into these very deep red, very deep orange areas on the chart, it has proven to be great opportunities in terms of buy zones here. And we're very neutral right now. So we need to be aware that we may need a bit of a flush. We see people just continuing to leverage all the way into these markets. I haven't refreshed this, I don't think, all day. So let's take a look. Well, look, as the price was pushing up, you started getting a very hot yellow zone down in here. And then what happened? The price pushed up. Oh, yeah, our longs are good. Nope, sucker punched you. Boom. Let's go down and liquidate these folks on the chart. That's exactly what's happened. Now, the question is, why is the price action doing this? Are we going to get that move further down into this territory, which would ultimately still be an overwhelmingly bullish setup still in this market if this price action were to come down to a known level that would still be a higher low? This would actually be a very healthy area to move. So what would that area look like on the larger fib of that zone? Well, let's just take a look. So if we measured from this zone right here and do Option F if you're on Mac, if you're on PC, Alt F, nothing happens. But if you put your mouse right there and then click after you do Option F or Alt F, move your mouse up to the top and realize even this zone right here is well above the golden pocket, which even coming all the way down here to 115, this would flush out that huge amount of liquidity that still has been stacked up below us and still remain bullish. So people worried about even hitting this target here at 117, 118, which we've had outlined on the charts for, 4 or 5 days. This zone, especially with the potential, a little bit more of a bear trap down, to me actually would be the healthiest thing that could happen right now. So why are we so frustrated? Well, let's also look at some of the other data, because we got Ted Pillows here that shared right here. He basically highlighted this a couple hours ago, a little after noon my time. And it says OG Bitcoin whale has opened a 419 million, almost a $500 million Bitcoin short position. So while this may be the case that could be driving some of the price down, it's also the speculative fear that is around. Does this mean it's over? But it's also the market makers and big money players that see this and can also basically layer onto this and sell into the fear that's in the market to take advantage of the fear that's there so that they can get a better position. The question is, are you going to be around when the market reverses? Do you think it's over? Be out. That's your strategy. It's your capital. You got to do what you're going to do. But I know what I'm seeing, and it just, everything feels like it's just getting delayed and delayed. But this rubber band, in my opinion, is still going to pop to the upside. So we have to make sure that we follow the best, the most proven crypto signal in the market. And that is shut up, calm down, wait, be patient, allow the market to develop at the pace that it needs to. And if you're around when it pops, then you can reap the rewards. The question is going to be, do you think the bull market's going to continue? Do you think it's over? You have to make that decision based on the information that you collect. We here, Discover Crypto, we want to give you all the different sets of data, the varied opinions between myself and Drew and DZ and TJ and Tim, and understanding also in our Discord that there are an overwhelming amount of signs that it looks like it's more likely than not that there is still upside. But you have to make that decision in how you're trading. I don't want you to wreck yourself jumping into a position based on something you saw on YouTube, but then not knowing how to navigate that. You have to have conviction in the plays you're making. I haven't sold. I'm still fully in. I still think we're going higher. This is one of the reasons why right here, Bitcoin will go up forever. But why is it going down now? Because you got to zoom out, remember? Because if you look at Bitcoin versus the dollar, it's, this is what we see. First off, this is gold, right? Right here, gold price. The gold price moving up. Cool. Now, what is the, look at this, percentage of change in gold price? I mean, it's just swinging back and forth. Now, the price is moving up, but along the way, we see oscillations of volatility that shake people out on the way to the upside. Now, when you consider what's going on with Bitcoin and realize, especially, I mean, look at this. This is zoomed out. When you zoom out on the chart, you realize, yes, there's still corrections, but this is getting more aggressive, especially as more capital access channels are coming in and the landscape is becoming more of a supportive posture of the market versus a very constrictive and hostile posture that Bitcoin lived through the entire time. In fact, if you really consider this is what's blowing my mind in people's sort of navigation of this market. Where is let's go ahead and delete this fib right here. Let's go ahead and delete this fib right here. And I just want to highlight where this is right here. Where is right here? Boom. This is basically the inauguration this year. Every bit of time, all the way, and the chart goes back further. Let's actually do an older chart. There we go. Let's go right here. Okay. So every bit of time from here, roughly about here, all of this price action from down here, in the 50s, 20s, 10s, $1, all the way up to this portion right here is where Bitcoin was in a constrictive environment. In fact, the world and the banking cartels had their foot on the throat of Bitcoin, and yet it went from zero all the way up to $109,000. And we're in a whole new era here. This is all we've done with Bitcoin so far in this new situation where Bitcoin has the support of the most powerful economy in the history of the world in the US. And people are worried. Let's go to the 15-minute chart so it looks bad. People are worried about this. Really? Guys, let's get our heads out of our butts and realize that this is a function of seeing who is going to be here to ride this wave to the top. Now, will the dip come down here to 118? You know, this that previous range that we talked about before. Basically this zone right here. Is it going to come a little bit further down, into the 117? Is it going to come a little bit further? I don't care where it goes, because everything that happens from this point forward is going to be an absolute moon rocket for those that are strapped in, and absolute shakeouts for those that don't understand that the world just changed in favor of just absolute capital maximus to the crypto ecosystem. So when we wonder on a day like today where the price is pulling back a little bit, let's also realize that from the all-time high, this is one of the most luxurious pullbacks I've seen. 4%, 4.8. Okay, now they're 3.8% from the high, and people are worried. Maybe it's a little more. Let's see. Yeah, right there, about 4% down, and people think that the market cycle might have topped. What are we talking about? What are we really talking about here, guys? Because when you zoom out on this chart and realize, looking back at 2017, this is normal in this asset class. Minus 41%, minus 27%, minus 14%, minus 39%, minus 34%, minus 32%, minus 28%, minus 39%. All these times Bitcoin, quote unquote, should have died. Minus 40%, minus 30%. Guys, and we're over here again. Let's just go back to what we just saw. Let's just look at this. Let's look at the end of this cycle. Minus 4%. What are we even worried about here? Guys, shut up, calm down, wait, stack like your future depends on it, because it does. And then when you consider moving forward, gold is moving, Nvidia is moving, Meta is moving, all these. This is everything. Gold and the S&P 500. So this accounts for most of those large tech stocks that we're talking about. But gold and S&P priced in Bitcoin. Look at the reduction here. This means everything is melting in value against Bitcoin. So yes, other things are moving right now. Great. This oscillation is great. It's shaking out a lot of the tourists in the space. But this to me tells me, guys, yes, gold's outpacing Bitcoin. Well, I see your short-term vision and I zoom out, because this is what we're seeing over time. There's going to be periods where gold outpaces. There's going to be periods especially with AI, where you're going to have different AI compute and AI businesses that pop up out of nowhere that just grow dramatically early on. Then eventually, especially as Bitcoin continues to persist higher, everything is going to melt against Bitcoin. So understanding that and realize that we got a guest coming on here in a bit, that we are kind of dancing in these sort of over leveraged games in the market where the market makers are able to see, okay, people are too frothy here. Do you understand? If you want this market to continue higher, you cannot have 85% of the market leveraged long and have those exchanges still exist in 3 months. If everybody's leveraged long, how do you think the people make money? How can they get paid out if the exchange has to pay everybody in the ecosystem an exponent that those people borrowed from them to make those leveraged positions? So we need healthy, both long and shorts, but also buys and sales in the market that can test themselves on the way up. So you actually get a healthy sort of defense of a bullish area or a defense of a bearish area. And if the bulls are basically over time stronger and more momentous, and there's more capital coming in and the strength is still high, then the trend persists up. If it gets far too frothy where you get all these short-term buyers and, just weak-handed people that are buying hype, it's very easy to shake them out with the market reversing back to the downside. So I'm still overwhelmingly bullish about what we're seeing in this market. When we consider what's going on, if we went directly up from where we're at right now, I'm talking straight up, that would put us at a market cycle top up here at basically right at $200,000, $199,889. Now, why do I say that? Because if you look back at this chart, the Bitcoin price has touched this red line every cycle, and the touching of the line wasn't the end of the cycle. So if we went directly straight up from where we're at right now, we got no bend in this. As we see here, this touched it there, but it bends to the upside. In fact, we can zoom in on that so you can see what I'm talking about. You see this comes up, it touches it. Great, finds support, bulls defend. It still progresses higher until it ultimately touched it here again, where this initially early on was $1,800. Well, where was the top here? Look at that, all the way up here at about $19,600. Touched it again right here. Where was the top if you went straight up here? That is at $21,500. Well, then it touched it again right here at $40,000. This is where it actually touched that red line, and it was melting to the upside. It ultimately topped out up here at $65,000. I mean, it really topped out a little bit later on over here at $69,000. But what we're seeing right now in the market, and people are so worried. I mean, this has only made kind of beautiful stair steps to the upside. So in the event that the price action went directly up, boom, that would be $199,000 Bitcoin. And I expect at some point we will touch this. The question is going to be, what's going to be the shape when we get there? Are we going to do something like this? Or are we going to do something a little more pronounced like this? It's hard to say because we have a different context of the market holder now, with corporate treasury stacking, with high net worth individuals stacking, with 401k and pension plans having the ability to have allocations to Bitcoin, with ETFs, with people that are looking 5, 10, 20, 30 years out, not saying, am I on the 1 hour chart? Can I buy and sell and scalp today? Now, all of us are degens. We're going to do that, sure. And I hope you're doing it with a smaller allocation of your portfolio. But there is higher to go in this market when we look over here at Bitcoin and realize, let's get back over to that chart we were looking at. There it is right there. Guys, the shape of this does look lower low, lower high, leading signal to me that there's more likely than not going to get a move to the downside. We've already got the area mapped out of where that likely will be, down here in this 118 zone. Now, if we see a lot of strength come in here, maybe a little rip to the downside, then we could talk about that next move to the upside. Now, looking at targets to the downside from here does not negate that you potentially are overwhelmingly bullish for where this cycle is going to go. Everybody was expecting an overwhelmingly bearish September, and we got a bullish first half and kind of bearish second half, but it actually ultimately ended up pretty decent. When you look at let's actually look at that. Let's look at the monthly chart. Let's look at September. Okay, let's see what happened in September. Here's September. Was that the most bearish month on record always for Bitcoin? Turned out to be bullish. Now, did it end up like we wanted? No, But you can see here, if we turn off everything on there, you see the price did try to go down. It also came up here and ended up opening here and closing here. The price during September did go up in here and come back down. But the point here is the narrative was September was supposed to be super bearish and October is Uptober. It's always up. Well, we did go up. We hit a new all-time high. So technically we've kind of fulfilled that expectation. The problem with the expectation is people say it's going to go up. It has to stay up. Well, it's gone up. It's come back down. Now people think it's over, but this could end up hitting 3, 4, 5, 6 more all-time highs this month. It's October 9th. We're not even a third of the way through this month, and people are just like, it's over. Well, let's let some things play out. If we get down to the 3-day chart, for instance, we see, okay, we've got to, this nice sort of move up. Okay, a little stair step down. Nice move up. Weaker though. See how much bigger this move is than this? This was showing that the bullish momentum was weakening, but we did have another little bit of a sell-off, still higher lows. And then boom, we got a new all-time high. And now there's a little bit of weakness in the market. So let's look at that on the 4-hour chart and say, okay, the macro still looks like it has room to breathe higher, but this is kind of cooling off a bit. And if we look at just this chart formation, we have a little lower low, a little lower high, a little lower low. This is actually starting to take a little bit different shape than I was looking at earlier, which is why we look at different charts and different contexts to see if something is forming along the way, because sometimes your narrative can change as there's more data that's involved. In this case, it does look like it's forming a bit of a falling wedge. However, I'm not going to say it's a falling wedge. It has to go bullish. It has to break bullish, because what we've seen, and I highlight this over and over again in this market, is that the market might provide a potential bullish pattern only to break the opposite direction, trapping people, and then resolving in the direction the pattern would have suggested. Something like I've talked about before, having that move down, which would be perfectly in line actually with what we just talked about on this other chart. Where's that other chart? I have too many charts here. Too many charts in the kitchen. Okay, we're going to go. There we go. There we go. So look at that. That's coming down into this zone. This would also be similar to if we do this like this, got a bit of a channel there. Yeah, this could oscillate in here and really wreck people. Just keep trapping people long, trapping people short, getting a bit of a washout and then moving. That wouldn't surprise me. Now, when we look at this on the 8-hour, I do want to highlight something. The RSI is still, on this 8-hour at least, is still above the 50 line. Money flow is negative though. So as it stands, the strength is still trying to maintain control. This is just price action, a pattern, a level, and two data indicators. What we're seeing here is not a breakdown of the entire bullish narrative. On the 8-hour chart, the strength is still in control. The money flow is trying to pull out, yet the strength, the bulls are defending this area so far. Now, if this is lost, again, it doesn't mean it's over. It just means we're more likely than not to fulfill this move. So let's be a little bit patient here. And then you come over here to like Ethereum, for instance. Why is ETH failing? Well, we talked about this the other day. I talked about this on the bounce. If this cannot get back above this 50 line, basically halfway through this broadening wedge, that this will likely end up failing and ultimately break to the downside. What has it done? Broke to the downside, and then we had a target identified. Also, I hope you guys are tuned in. I hope you're hitting the like button. I hope you are subscribed. I hope you have your notifications on, because we have been nailing the breakdowns of these charts, nailing the breakdowns of what's going on. Sometimes things shake up a little more than you expect, but that's why, especially on when I'm doing the stream here in the afternoons, I try to highlight. Even if I don't really think it's going to break down, I say, okay, well, if it does, these are the levels. If it's going to pump, these are my projected levels that I'm watching. This way we have a plan in place as things transpire, as things develop. I hope we're all paying attention here. And now as we're chatting, let me pull up the live comments here. I just want to make sure I'm seeing Bitcoin Mag Pro. Are you in the back room? I don't see you there. Single person. Did you not get, I sent you Bitcoin Mag Pro. I sent you a DM on X. You should have a link there that you should be able to join in through. So hop in there. Let's get you on. We got some magic to share though. But the point here is, first off, where's everybody tuned in from? I'm curious what city, what state, or what city and what country. I want to see where everybody's tuned in from. But then also throw one if the majority, or if the largest holding, it might not be the majority, but the largest holding in your crypto portfolio is Bitcoin. Throw a 2 in if it's if altcoins are the dominant hold, throw a 3 in if you have no Bitcoin at all and you're only in altcoins. Throw a 4 if you're just a meme degen. Curious to see what you guys say. Let's say, okay, let me see. He's in an empty studio. I don't know why, but let me send him. And guys, give me 1 second. I'm just going to send him copy invite link. Give me 1 moment. I just got to send him the link. For some reason, he couldn't get in there, and that's okay. There we go. Let me know if that works, my brother. And we'll see you in there in a moment. Yeah, but we've got frustration in the mix because there's expectation in the market. Take your expectation out of this market and let the market grow over time. Let it develop. Let all these fundamental shifts that we've seen supercharge the possibilities of what's coming in. And because of that, there's heightened expectations, which means we're seeing these massive liquidations because people are just over leveraging themselves in the market. So when we get back over here, there he is. We got our man. We got our main man in the house, Mr. Matt Crosby from Bitcoin Magazine Pro. For those of you, I was just showing earlier, Matt, I was just showing this right here. This is, oops, that's the wrong. Let me go back to this screen right there. I was showing this, and this is from Bitcoin Magazine Pro. For those of you that know, I share this kind of stuff regularly. The MVRV Z score, value days destroyed. I share a lot of this. Is Matt Crosby from Bitcoin Magazine Pro, and he's going to break down some of the things that he's seeing and what we should be paying attention to. But first off, how you doing? And is the bull market over?
Thank you very much for having me, Kelly. I know there was a few technical difficulties there, but I'm doing very well, thank you. I'm currently in Vietnam, so it's fairly early at 3:25 in the morning. But when Kelly calls, I answer. So very happy to be here. And to answer your question, I definitely don't think the bull market is over. There is, of course, the argument to be made that, looking at the 4-year cycle, we are seeing some correlations between the two previous bull markets that we're getting very close to where we typically do see the bull market top out. But I don't necessarily think that's the case. The number one thing that moves not just Bitcoin, but any market isn't the date on the calendar. It's supply and demand economics. And using on-chain data, we can see in real time the amount of people buying and selling Bitcoin, the underlying sentiment like you were showing with the fear and greed index. And just because we're X amount of days through the cycle doesn't necessarily mean that I'm bearish. I think we're going to top in the coming week or two. If anything, I'm incredibly bullish looking at a number of on-chain metrics because really it's just mass psychology quantified. And the amount of fearful sentiment in the market right now is just completely different to what really we'd expect to see as Bitcoin is creating new all-time highs. I mean, from multiple different perspectives, global M2 continues to rally. We have had a little bit of a stagnation and pause in this, the global M2 money supply, which has maybe coincided with Bitcoin having this sideways choppy period of price action. But ultimately, things look great. If you look at the Bitcoin volatility on a quarterly basis, Bitcoin has almost never been this coiled in, this amount of consolidation. So I think we're really on the cusp of a big exponential breakout, and my bet is definitely to the upside.
No, I mean, I definitely agree with you. That it's a confounding market. I was talking with the team about this here at Hit Network, Discover Crypto guys, earlier today. And, even some of the other, major power players in the TA side of things, like Matthew Hyland and Kevin Svensson. And there is frustration, not only amongst participants and traders and investors, but also all of us are, I don't want to say shepherds of, but very much a part of communities that we've built here at Discover Crypto. I'm sure you with Bitcoin Magazine Pro and all the users you have there, but all of us see it on crypto Twitter as well. It really does feel different. And I hate that phrase, this time's different, but I feel like last cycle, there was a lot of lessons that were quote unquote learned. And so from that quote unquote learning, people projected into this cycle. I've got it figured out now. I know what I'm going to do. And it's just been like chaos. We had memes running at their own time, not after the capital rotation that was supposed to happen. And then we had like these 2 mini alt season cycles that realized, maybe it's accumulation for the real alt season, but then that's not happening. And then you see Bitcoin just break every time Bitcoin goes up, alts rise a little, and then it drops 2% and alts lose 20, 30, 40%. It feels like, and then you look at gold and you look at stocks, and everything that you're like out of those markets, I'm going to make money in crypto. But then you're looking at gold is outperforming all the freaking altcoin. What's going on, Matt? What can we look to in the charts? What is the different behavior? Are long-term holders doing something different? Are short-term holders doing something different? Give us some juice, baby.
Yeah, for sure. So, of course, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. If it was as simple as it was in every single cycle, I remember 2017 and even the previous cycle, you could just throw money at anything and you'd do okay. And I'm definitely not a Bitcoin maxi, but it definitely feels like a lot of the pain this cycle comes from potential over-allocation to things that have really bled against Bitcoin. Now, here we've got the MVRVZ score. This is looking at the unrealized profit of the realized cap, the average accumulation price of all Bitcoin investors on the network, and the underlying price of Bitcoin. And what we can see is we still have substantial room to go to the upside. The average investor is still at a fairly decent profit. It's just not as much as last cycle. And that's mainly due to the, let's be honest, fairly boring price action we've had, where we've had this big step up in price action before a long, choppy period of sideways and consolidation. But what we can look towards is metrics like the hodl waves. What we can do is if we just remove the lower band, so this is dividing Bitcoin into different age bands, how long has each investor actually held their Bitcoin? If we remove all of them apart from the 6 months plus, we can still see well over 75% of Bitcoin is still held by long-term holders. Now, a lot of people look to 6 months and say, well, that's not long-term holding. You need to be holding for 2, 3, 5, 10 years, however long. But beyond about 155 days, you're actually more likely to hold Bitcoin indefinitely than sell it again soon. So the fact that
let me pause you there for a moment, though. So you said currently we're at about 65% for long-term holders.
About 75%, yeah.
So 75%. So how would you say that compares to 2017 and 2021?
So we can see here in 2017, it went down all the way to sub 50%, and that started from above 70. So we saw millions of coins being moved. And you also have to keep in mind the number of short-term holders that actually exist currently has been increasing. So what I can do is if I can find the chart over here, what we can do is look at the short and long-term holder supply chart. Now, this cycle, again, has been pretty peculiar. If we just hide the Bitcoin price action, we can see in previous cycles, there's been this long, drawn-out period of bull market selling by these long-term holders. The long-term holder supply has a very smooth downtrend, whereas this cycle, we've had 3 distinct peaks. And this is because we've had these long periods of choppy consolidation. And as well as that, a lot of the new market participants, a lot of these short-term holders actually buying the new Bitcoin aren't retail like they historically have been. These are institutional buyers, treasury companies, people that once they've accumulated aren't looking to sell Bitcoin anytime soon. So of course this changes the supply and demand economics of the network. But I think because we haven't had this big retail FOMO, people are maybe thinking that this time is different for bearish reasons. Maybe we're not going to get this big blow off top. Maybe we're not going to get this big bull market end of year rally that everyone's kind of been anticipating, but maybe now thinking isn't the most likely outcome. But just because we're seeing some changes in the dynamics of Bitcoin's holders definitely doesn't make me bearish. If anything, more bullish than ever, that because we now have this institutional inflow, if we look at the ETFs, there's billions and billions of dollars pouring into Bitcoin. This is capital inflows that just cannot be seen through retail investors. And again, I know everyone's a little bit disheartened because we haven't had this big exponential rally as we're seeing gold fly to new all-time highs, as we're seeing equities continue to rally hard. But really, I do just think it's a matter of time before we see that rotation from other assets into Bitcoin.
So, one of the things I've noticed this cycle, which is very pronounced, and I don't mean to throw a wrench in anybody, what you like or dislike, it's more of an observation. And first off, I would like to ask everybody that's tuned in, whether you're on YouTube, whether you're on X, drop a 1 in chat right now if you're frustrated at all with this market. Because typically when you get to this stage and what should be the 4-year cycle theory, this is that euphoria stage. People are taking screenshots. They're like, dude, they're spending the money in their mind, not being smart, not taking profits, but there's excitement, general excitement. Throw a 1 in chat if you are frustrated at all with the market scenario right now. I expect to see, we got 2,868 people watching. I expect to see 2,868 ones, because there's not a person I know in this market that's not at least a little bit frustrated here. So, but one of the things going to altcoins, Chainlink's narrative is becoming realized in their integrations throughout the crypto ecosystem, as well as the promise or the hope about Swift coming true. DTCC. I mean, the 24 different major banking financial institutions that have signed on the CC. I mean, there's so much going on there, and yet the price is flat. And then you look at XRP, and it's maintained this overwhelming bullishness with the community. So it makes you question. And again, I'm not hating on one or another, saying one's better than the other, but it shines a light to me on the overwhelming speculative nature that is still imbued in this market versus prices reflecting the true value of the asset for the underlying utility that it's quote unquote supposed to deliver. Would you say that is the case? And if so, how long until we actually get to true market value versus full speculative cycles?
I mean, it's the $1 million question. I'd obviously love to say it's going to happen next week or next month, but really it's a bit of a waiting game. Investing pays the most patient investors. And especially in the altcoin market, I'm definitely not a Bitcoin maxi at all, as much as I'm obviously biased towards it. I think that altcoins are good for the space. They can provide new utilities, and if anything, can be a test net for new technologies for Bitcoin to potentially integrate in the future. But we usually see this rotation within the cryptocurrency markets where money is usually packed in fiat or stable coins or just these safe haven assets. Then it usually rotates into Bitcoin. This is when we see Bitcoin start to rally. And then from that, once Bitcoin has this little pause, we usually see capital rotate into large caps like Ethereum and Solana, and then it trickles down into these small speculative alts. So because we've had this period of Bitcoin really choppy and consolidating, we haven't had this big exponential rally yet to allow new capital to pour in and then eventually rotate into these more volatile and smaller market cap assets. It's kind of just a waiting game at the minute where everyone's looking to Bitcoin saying, is this the start of the bear market? Are we really going to have this big run up? Is this the asset class that I really want to be pouring my own money into? So I think until we actually start to see Bitcoin rally like we previously have done in other cycles, then I don't really think we're going to see this big altcoin season, which obviously a lot of people are waiting for, but I do think it's going to happen at some point. It's usually fairly short-lived, usually a month or two at most, but once we start to see Bitcoin really rally, we're probably going to see alts against Bitcoin again start to struggle a little bit initially, but once we start to see Bitcoin really start rounding off, start getting towards that market peak, capital is going to start rotating, and hopefully alts like Link, Cardano, whatever your favorite altcoin is, which I'm sure is better than all the other ones, is going to start doing exceptionally well.
Well, you know, the other thing, considering this last cycle from January 11th, 2023, when the ETFs, or 2024, sorry, January 11th, 2024, when the ETFs got approved, and then shortly thereafter, after you saw this massive success, not only with MicroStrategy strategy, Michael Saylor having such growth and appetite there for their assets, and the institutional corporate interest and appetite for the ETFs. Then we have these corporate treasuries, sort of this runaway train of this treasury, that treasury, this treasury. And then this is also compounded with what we're seeing with NVIDIA, right? And what we're seeing with even Oracle, the massive bump that they got the other day, or I guess it was about a month ago. But we're seeing all these other vehicles I don't think people were thinking about in contention with their favorite altcoin moving. So there's all these other opportunities that are rooted in a bit more legacy that major money players are like, well, why am I going to go and drop VC money or investment money in this area when this other sector, which is already rooted in such storied legacy and entrenched in global finance and tech, and they have P&Ls and they have provable all this stuff. It's not so much of a pipe dream. Do you think that that's having some downward pressure or resistive pressure on alts actually blooming, or do you think those are two entirely different sectors with entirely different capital pools?
I definitely think it plays into it to some extent, because most people this cycle, most investors within the space seem to be these larger players, these treasury companies, these big ETF buyers. And frankly, it doesn't seem that they're quite as interested in altcoins. In previous cycles, it's been these big retail influx cycles where these new retail everyday participants are coming in and trying to make the returns that Bitcoin has made over the past 10 years. They can throw a couple $100 in this new altcoin and hopefully you can see a 10x or a 100x. Whereas this cycle, because it's been mainly institutionally driven, they're fairly happy with seeing Bitcoin at its 50% compounded annual growth rate. They're not trying to get too greedy. They're wanting to store their money into something that's a little bit more liquid that they can actually start allocating to. But within traditional markets, there does seem to be a little bit of a shift in kind of sentiment and approach that we haven't really seen in traditional equity bull markets, where historically the advice was always to diversify, to look for good value assets, to try and find ones with good price to earning ratios, etc. Whereas in the past few years, since we really kind of saw this big quantitative easing and this huge stimulus package in the US, everyone's kind of pouring all of their capital into just a select few tech stocks, commodities like gold. We're not really seeing this big diversification. So we are seeing this big discrepancy and divergence between the assets that are performing well and the assets that are kind of lagging behind, haven't caught their interest yet. And I think a lot of people maybe misunderstand how markets are truly value, how they get their own prices. It's not as an underlying reflection of the economy, and now it's not anymore a reflection of how strong the company's financials are or how optimistic its future may be. It's what can provide the best return for investors. Again, it's simple supply and demand economics. And if investors are looking towards Nvidia and gold and whatnot and seeing these assets making these crazy percentage returns, then why wouldn't they jump on that train?
You know, I totally hear you there. You know, and I think I think the market in some way is still getting its footing on an entirely different landscape. I mean, what we look at from a year ago to today, even anything prior to January 20th of this year with the new administration, the amount of legislation or even proposed legislation that's come out is a different universe from what we've seen in the market at any time in the history of crypto up until now. I was highlighting at the beginning of the show that all the way up until January 20th, when Bitcoin hit $109,000, every single day up until that point, Bitcoin was facing the global financial elite's foot on the neck of the industry until January 20th of this year, where we have an administration that's like, oh no, let's actually empower this ecosystem. Let's clear the way forward. So I do feel like there's kind of like some reshuffling in the background and some reassessing of, okay, my capital, how, where, when, because there's different vehicles now for Bitcoin too, whether it's the right vehicle, if you're going to be in a corporate treasury or an ETF, who's to say? I mean, everybody has to make those own decisions. I think everybody should, if you're going to have allocations to an ETF or a corporate treasury as a stock, you know, exposure to Bitcoin, I think you should at minimum have a decent portion of that actually represented also in your portfolio as Bitcoin self-custody. But with the altcoin ecosystem, I still, and I don't want to say I'm doubting it, because I look at the data and it feels to me like this is just a very extended accumulation that is kind of getting to the point where everybody feels like it's not going to happen. And then we're going to just see some liftoff that leaves so many people behind because they didn't trust the process and they thought it had to be a 4-year cycle. But then I look forward to an election cycle coming up this next year. I look at the money printing that has to occur with the bills that have signed. I look at the corporate interest and how much scaling and building of investment in this ecosystem. And I'm overwhelmingly bullish, but in the near term, because I am human, even though I look at this data, I'm like, why not now, man? Come on, give us those green candles, baby.
100%. I mean, who wouldn't like to see every asset just continue to rocket, especially the ones that you hold, which are obviously the best ones. But this is the thing, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. And the market likes to punish the most participants as possible. And if everyone is currently invested, currently waiting for these big, massive returns, the market might wait until people start moving out, rotating out, become sidelined. And that's when the market is going to punish the most participants. That's when we're going to actually see this big rally happen. But for Bitcoin, who knows exactly when that'll be? We could still have a consolidation around this range for a few more days, a few more weeks. We could retest $118,000 on a more short-term basis. But just zooming out, not just from an on-chain perspective, from a macroeconomic perspective, we're starting to see the Fed pivot into a more bullish macroeconomic environment. Clearly, the risk appetite in traditional markets is there, considering how much equities and gold have been on a tear. And then from an on-chain perspective, technical perspective, things are starting to look pretty bullish for Bitcoin. Of course, we're seeing incredibly low volatility, but the amount of selling that we've seen over the past few weeks, which has kind of hindered the upside of Bitcoin, is really starting to diminish. We're seeing less long-term holders begin taking profit. So as soon as we do start to see a little bit of a rotation, things can get fast very, very quickly. I think people maybe fail to realize how crazy Bitcoin can get. If you can just share the chart that I'm currently showing on screen. in this cycle already, Bitcoin has made 5 separate moves of over 65%, which if we were to replicate any one of them, over $180,000 before the end of the year. These are moves that have already happened. So everyone's saying this time is different. Institutions are here. We're not going to see this big, massive parabolic move for Bitcoin. I think maybe getting a little bit carried away with things. When everyone talks about institutions and how great they are at investing, this was from an analysis piece a couple of weeks ago. Anytime we've actually seen the average ETF inflows become outflows, so ETF have actually been net sellers in the market, has marked exact local bottoms in the Bitcoin price action. Institutions are trend following traders. They don't try to time the market mean reversions. They're looking to hop on what is performing best. So the fact that Bitcoin is currently stagnating is probably leading a lot of traditional investors to kind of wait and rotate into other assets. But as soon as Bitcoin starts kicking off, this is when it almost becomes this self-fulfilling loop, this big feedback loop of capital coming in, price increasing, more people seeing price increasing, more capital coming in. So it's almost this snowball avalanche effect, which I'm very excited for. Of course, it's very frustrating to sit here and say, yeah, but when is it going to happen? If we knew, then we'd all be rich. But the point is, if we look at Bitcoin through a purely data-driven lens, things still look positive. Things still look bullish for the market.
I love it. And I love the charts you break down. And also, I do want to highlight real quick the Bitcoin Magazine Pro. Guys, everybody make sure you go and giving them a follow here at Bitcoin Mag Pro. Again, that's at Bitcoin Mag Pro. They've got a lot of incredible free tooling as well. You can get a subscription as well and take it to that next level, but you can come over here, bitcoinmagazinepro.com, come up here to charts, go to Bitcoin charts, and there is quite a few things that you can utilize there. And the best part about this, especially with me being kind of a crypto educator on here, if you don't understand the chart, scroll down. Look at that. Look at that. It breaks down exactly what's going on. Sometimes you just got to be a little bit more curious than going, I don't know what that means. Cool. Dig deeper or you're not going to make it. They made it easy for you to dig deeper. It's right there. And then also I do want to highlight, where is it at? Make sure you're following Matt as well right here at Matt Crosby Pro, because he is a pro. He's I don't want to call you a pro Cosby, but pro Matt Crosby. There you go. Matt Crosby Pro right there. But yeah, give him a follow. And I just want to shout out everybody later on this evening, and not too long, about 45 minutes. I will be doing a spaces. Matt, if you want to join on this, you're more than welcome to. We're going to be talking about the markets. I got Zach Humphreys joining, John Gillen, who's ex-VP over at BlackRock, and he's a super smart fellow. He's also part of Milk Road, the Milk Road newsletter and a podcast on macro crypto, what's going on. And Sammy Loyal, for any of you that have been following him for a long time, he used to be called Four Flies, but he's one of the first crypto YouTubers I watched. And of course, Chris Klein, one of the founders of Bitcoin IRA, is going to be on there with me. Again, that link is there on the Discover Crypto wall. I also shared it on my wall. Join us at 5:30. We're going to be talking. Matt, I'll send you an invite on that if you want to join on that as well. But before we wrap up, I do want to shout out to everybody that's here. Do you think Ethereum is going to make it beyond $7,000 this year? There's a huge debate that ETH might be dead. Maybe BNB is taking over. At the same time, we're seeing stablecoins absolutely. I mean, the development, what's happening with stablecoins because of some of the recent legislation, the banks clamoring it again. I don't see ETH dying anytime in the next many years. The question is going to be, do you think we're going to get a rally this year or not, everybody? Let me know. Throw a 1 in chat if you think ETH is going to hit $7,000 this year. Throw a 2 in chat if you think it's going to hit $7,000, but it's going to be sometime next year. Curious to see what you guys got to say there. But Matt, final thoughts right now. Market's pulling back. People are melting down. You just gave a lot of great alpha there. But what are the 2 things you're looking at going into the end of this month?
Yeah, sure. So currently the chart I'm showing is similar to the hodl waves that we looked at previously, but this is the realized cap hodl wave. So it's looking at not just the different age bands of the market, but the different age bands relative to their influence on that average accumulation price, which again might sound a little confusing. If you come to any of the charts on the site and scroll down, you do get a little bit of an explanation. But the thing that really drives the tail end of bull markets is long-term holders being able to sell to new market participants at kind of a bit of a higher price than maybe fair value. And what we can see in this cycle already, we've already had two significant peaks as Bitcoin first surpassed about $73,000, $74,000. And again, as we first broke into six-figure territory. Now, these are when long-term holders realize new capital is rotating into the market and they can get a fairly good price for their Bitcoin. Now, this is still incredibly low. Now, there may be diminishing peaks on this, but the fact that we've already seen two distinct peaks this cycle, considerably higher than where we are now, indicates that long-term holders are maybe just waiting for the market to rebound a little bit in their favor. What we can also see is, I've got so many charts open. If we actually look at the number of whales selling Bitcoin, because a lot of people are maybe a bit worried that whales are dumping Bitcoin on the market, which has been the case to some extent. We have seen the long-term holder supply decreasing quite a lot recently, a huge amount of sell pressure. But the number of whales this is actually coming from is incredibly low. These are a few incredibly large entities offloading their Bitcoin. And this isn't typically what we see, again, aligning with Bitcoin bull market peaks or even local peaks that we've seen in this cycle. Usually when the market is topping out, we're seeing lots and lots of large market participants begin scaling out of their Bitcoin, which right now is the opposite. It's continuing to diminish. Very quickly as well, if we look at the market capitalization of gold since 2024, when it was about $14 trillion, it's increased over $10 trillion. And this date is a little bit out of date. I think the gold market cap's close to about 27 trillion now. So that's over a $10 trillion increase in a under 2-year period. That's more than Bitcoin's entire market cap multiplied by about 4 or 5x. So if we just see a decent amount of this capital rotate into Bitcoin, and when I say a decent amount, I actually mean a fairly low amount. If we look at the money multiplier, the amount of market cap increase we see for $1 flowing into the market, it's currently around a 4x. So if we would see Bitcoin do a 2x, so its market cap would double, then we'd only need about 5% of the market capitalization that gold has captured in the past 2 years to rotate into Bitcoin. If only 5% rotates, we'll probably double in price action. And finally, if we actually look at Bitcoin compared to gold, the price action of gold, because everyone likes to look at the M2 money supply with a 10-week offset or so, the highest correlation for Bitcoin this cycle in terms of its price forecasting correlation to another asset has actually been gold with a 40-day lag, over a 92% correlation. Now, as we can see, Bitcoin is very closely following this gold price action. And if we can continue following this, then it points to a Bitcoin price of over $150,000 by early November. So everything is aligning, everything is bullish from my perspective, from an on-chain macroeconomic derivative technical sentiment. Everything is looking good. It's just a painful process to actually sit through these boring periods of choppy price action. But as I said, I don't think it's going to last forever, and investing rewards those with patience.
So to wrap it all up on a day where the market's over, it's dumping, it's dead, the market, you look at the charts, you look at the data, and rather than being a victim of the emotionality of price and hope, the data suggests that there is an incredible bullish foundation that's still here, still very well in place, and higher is more likely than not by a significant margin. So stack on, hold on to your butts because we got higher to go. Everybody, I do appreciate y'all. Make sure you're following, again, make sure you're following Matt Crosby and Bitcoin Magazine Pro, which is right here. Where is that screen? Boom, right there. Oh, that's not it. Here we go. Add to stage. Bitcoin Magazine Pro at Bitcoin Mag Pro. And of course, Matt Crosby right here at Matt Crosby Pro. Make sure you're giving them a follow. And remember, 5:30 p.m. today, 5:30 p.m. today. I just shared that link in the comments there before. We'll be on, which is in about 40 minutes from now, talking macro, talking markets, talking altcoins. Is BNB starting a bit more of an alt season, or is this specifically within the BNB ecosystem? And as we wrap this out, I'm curious, every one of you out there, are you focused at all in the BNB ecosystem? Do you have exposure there? And if so, what's something we're missing? Drop those coins in those comments. Drop the comments down below. Let us know what you're looking at so we can have them on our radar too. But that's all we got today. Matt, thank you so much for being with us here, dropping the alpha. I look forward to having you on again here in the near future.
Anytime, any place. Always a pleasure, Kelly. Thank you very much for having me. And I hope everyone in the audience at least learned a little bit today, at least learned that maybe it's not all bearish and doom and gloom. And hopefully there's just a little bit of a glimmer of hope that 2025 can really end the way that we're all anticipating.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you again at a conference sometime soon. Everybody out there, hit that like button, show some love. Let's get the engagement up on X, on YouTube. While the price engagement feels down, let's make sure we're diving into knowledge. That's all I got, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another Discover Crypto. We'll see you in the next one. Adios.
We just wanted to take a quick second to shout out our sponsor, Arculus. They are a cold storage hardware wallet, helps you secure all of your digital assets for the future. Just tap this thing to the back of your phone and boom, you're in. We wouldn't be able to do this without them, but also wouldn't be able to do this without you guys, the Disco fam. You've supported us a lot over the years. If you want to support the channel now, just use the code DC20. It gets you 20% off this card. It's the #1 way you can support this channel going forward. Thank you for your support. We'll see you at the top.